A meeting in February of police, service groups, retailers and Lake Macquarie Council came up with the idea of creating a special place for teenagers of a Thursday night. With late night shopping, scores of youths hang around the centre and according to retailers, it's intimidating for shoppers. The youth venue in the Square's community room is a place where they can get together, listen to music and if they need it, there's always a friendly ear available.
I think youth like a place that they can call their own. They can say, this is where we hang out, or this is the cool place to hang. And that was partly why a lot of the youth hang around here on Thursday nights.
Bernie Mundel of the Salvation Army is one of 6 volunteers who man the centre. While he's aware of recent vandalism attacks and thefts in the area, he doesn't believe these teenagers are responsible.
It's mainly from people coming in from Newcastle and from other areas that pass through here in the early hours of the morning, and we found out that it's not really the teenagers around here that are causing the problem.
The facility is open every Thursday night.
And it appears a Lake Macquarie couple may have become unwilling participants in the bloody chaos. 88-year-old Ralph Hughes and his 81-year-old wife Edna were due to arrive at Rwanda's capital Kigali on Tuesday to help an outlying orphanage. But relatives in Australia have not heard from the couple since they left Pakistan more than a week ago en route to Kenya, then Rwanda. Ralph's son, Dr Owen Hughes of Kurrambong, west of Newcastle, says the family is concerned for his father and stepmother's safety.
Well, we naturally fear for his life and for the life of his new bride. They were only married last November, and we really don't know what's going to happen.
The last contact relatives had was a letter sent to the elderly couple from Rwanda friends awaiting their visit. The family has alerted Foreign Affairs, but our country has no diplomatic relations with a Central African nation. The Canadian Embassy has stepped in to help find the Australians, but contact is virtually impossible because communications have been cut.
We've been in contact with Foreign Affairs, we've registered the name. We've tried to phone through, but apparently all lines are cut.
But the family is confident Ralph's experience as a Seventh-day Adventist missionary will help the couple get out of trouble.
He's not the regular sort of 88-year-old. He's got plenty of life in him and, he could walk 20 miles if he had to.
Richard O'Leary, NBN News.
The lead pack flew into Dungog this afternoon at about 80 kilometres an hour, and there was no time for a wave as the breakaway group, all from the Institute of Sport, were keen to stretch their lead. By the time they'd reached the top of the Bindleborough Ranges, they had an unbeatable 4.5-minute break. The only question was which one of them would edge out the other two for line honours. The rest of the field, though, had more time to take in the sights and concentrate on just finishing. Today's 195-kilometre road race had taken a hefty toll. After 2 days of racing, exhaustion and fatigue finally set in. Less than half of the 80 starters completed the course.
MSB Waterways is carrying out an audit of boat moorings around the lake. It's thought there are more than 1,800, but nobody knows for sure. Not yet, at least, but it will be hard to hide an unregistered or non-regulation apparatus now that the MSB is using aerial photography and satellite positioning to tag every mooring.
This has been about 2.5 years been working on the system at the moment. It is high tech. The idea is that taking bearings off of foreshore structures is okay back 20 years ago, but nowadays there's a lot of things a lot more accurate and makes it more realistic for the boat owner to know that that piece of water that he's renting from the state government is his, and we can identify exactly what area he has got.
Rather than on a map, the coordinates of each mooring are listed into a database and can be checked to within a metre by inspectors honing in with satellite positioning gear. Moorings aren't cheap and are considered valuable stock in crowded waterways. Non-compliance with regulations can see moorings removed and boats impounded. Andrew Lobb, NBN News.
How you going there, folks? You all comfortable? Yeah? Oh, good. You got your seatbelts on there? What you want is on a world's first with a coach that's fully fitted with seatbelts throughout. This was specially designed for Australian Pacific.
The coach is the latest of a dozen ordered by the company to comply with Australian design rules which come into effect from July. Built by Denning in Queensland, the coach features rollover bars, an energy-absorbing frame, anti-lock braking and for every passenger a lap sash seatbelt.
It's not compulsory to wear them, but the people have the choice of where they want to wear it or not. So it's very good that they do have that choice now. I had a very good response from it. We've had a few tours go out with other coaches with the seatbelts on, and most of the people have tended to wear them.
The belts and specially anchored seats are still undergoing safety standards test, but seem to offer passengers, invited for a quick trial run on the coach today, a little added assurance. Even seasoned travellers were scared off trips after 2 tragic bus crashes on the North Coast in 1989.
It's nice to know that you've got some comfort there because of all the last bad accidents we've had, and had they've had seat belts, I think it would have been much less.
Very nice and very comfortable.
Australian Pacific is running its fleet of 48-seat coaches on long-haul trips as well as a promotional tour. Andrew Lobb, NBN News. It's a new name for what was the parish church of St Paul's, Birmingham Gardens, and from tonight a new minister will take to the pulpit. Julia Perry was ordained a priest 1.5 years ago after a heated debate over women priests.
I guess I can look forward to the day when having a woman appointed in charge of any ministry is not worthy of TV will be a good one. Voting in synods is one thing, actually experiencing women in ministry as assistants is another, experiencing women in charge of parishes or in chaplaincy is something that the Anglican Church is still exploring. So in some ways this is still just the beginning.
Julia has worked as a deacon in charge of the Williamtown parish and also as an assistant priest at Newcastle Cathedral. As well as a list of academic accomplishments to her credit, Julia is a chaplain at the University of Newcastle. It's hoped her presence will help bring the uni's population and the St Paul's congregation closer together. Julia will attempt to do so with the blessing of Bishop Roger Hurft, who'll hand the church to her in a ceremony tonight.
Led by light horsemen, the 60 exhausted but exhilarated riders arrived on the outskirts of Muswellbrook this afternoon. Except for one rest day, they've been on the back of a horse since last Saturday week. Their other companion has been the beautiful scenery they've encountered as they rode the 35 kilometres a day. The other less friendly friends have been the aches and pains that come with this 300-kilometre act of endurance. But you won't find any of the Riders for Life complaining.
Aches and pains, but all our riders, I think, are riding with their heart.
What's been the best part?
Just the company, every bit of it, everything about it. Well organised, well planned, the food, fantastic.
The annual charity rides began 4 years ago, and where the riders go, the dollars follow. More than $60,000 from this year's effort will go to help the Riding for the Disabled organisation and the Royal North Shore Heart Research. For now, though, the only thing on the riders' minds as they dismounted for the last time today was getting rid of the bruises accumulated over the 1.5 weeks.
Hot tub of water, mate, bath and a glass of scotch. It sounds good.
Richard O'Leary, NBN News.
On the outside, Newcastle recovered fairly quickly from the 1989 quake. Homes and buildings were put back together and the city got on with life. But according to architect Kevin Hoffman, Newcastle is still suffering the economic aftershocks. He points to inner-city vacant blocks where buildings and the business they brought to the area have disappeared. By contrast, he's seen how Americans go about their long-term quake recovery and has just returned from Los Angeles, rebuilding after its January earthquake. Their legislation is in place for cities to fund their own revitalisation projects by pooling council rates and state taxes and investing the money in redevelopment projects.
The way they do it, in a nutshell, is that they borrow against the improved property value and therefore the increased rates that would accrue to both the council and the water board and the state government from the improved developments. And they use that money to borrow the finances necessary to do the development.
Kevin Hoffman is a veteran of 2 LA earthquakes as well as Newcastle's and works with the EGE group from a now converted warehouse close to where the city suffered its most telling damage in the '89 quake, the Workers' Club. He'll deliver his findings in a report to Newcastle Council. Andrew Lobb, NBN News.
Maitland used its early possession to launch raids on the Butcher Boys line. The ball thrown out wide to post first points on the board. But the underdogs were back in the game after Brett Fisher picked up a lucky deflection to cross for a try. Central was suddenly surprise leaders by 6 points to 4. Tempers started to flare before a serious rib injury to Central prop Aaron Martin turned the game Maitland's way. A barnstorming run down the paddock by Greg Williams, setting up Frank Lawler for the first of his 4 tries. Minutes later and Lawler was over again as the pumpkin pickers scooted away to a 46 points to 6 drubbing of the home side. Richard O'Leary, NBN News.
At a special breakfast, the Chamber of Commerce gave a mid-year briefing on business in the Newcastle region. And the word is, the work is there if you look for it.
The hunt is situated very favourably. I really believe that if we can get a couple of years of strong economic growth nationally, we're in a superb position, a better position than we have been in decades.
Speakers called for local companies to chase opportunities through honeysuckle, minehunter work, even through the Chamber's network of contacts overseas. The Chamber believes the community's confidence can only rise with Newcastle's bicentenary in '97 and the Sydney Olympics 3 years later.
We're quite optimistic about the future.
Architect Brian Souters spoke of the new link between conservation groups and the Chamber, with business accepting that promoting the heritage of the city is a positive step in encouraging people to the region.
Last night, nothing could be done to stop the $140,000 Angie D being continually bashed against the rocks. The 12-metre cabin cruiser was ripped from its moorings at Point Clare and floated more than 2 kilometres along the Brisbane water before wedging itself on the shoreline. The damage was obvious on the stand-in boat for the Royal Volunteer Coastal Patrol. It had suffered massive scrapes and a few holes. By this afternoon, the timber vessel was finally winched to safety. And on the land, another victim of the overnight storm was a car parked in Davey Street, Kincumber. At midnight, this toppled tree crushed the vehicle, however no one was injured.
The end of the uni's lease in November threatens to close down the hall, which has provided accommodation for students for the past 3 years. The students say the university's Vice-Chancellor isn't prepared to renew the lease because of expense, even though they believe plans are underway to extend the Vice-Chancellor's residence.
There is a definite need for student housing, and we feel that the needs of 220 students is more important than extensions to the Vice-Chancellor's home.
The residents took their protests through the city centre. An area which would be adversely affected if the closure goes ahead.
It means the loss of a very valuable facility and a valuable cultural asset of having those students right in the heart of our city.
Councillor McNaughton voiced his strong support for Irene Hall at the rally which ended in Civic Park. He says something can be done and he is confident that the hall will remain a student residence.
I believe there is something we can do, and we've already put actions in place to do that, and I'm relatively confident that there'll be some positive outcome and we will be able to maintain it.
Paul Haslam took out the Mr Australia title in 1991 and 92. He has toned down his vigorous training schedule, which once saw him spend more than 30 hours a week at the gym. The physical education graduate spends more of his time now spreading the gospel of good health. Today he had a captive audience at the In Shape gym in Taree.
By all the current research, we are an overweight nation. It is helping a little bit. We're becoming more aware of our diet, but we still need to pick up on the exercise.
Haslam teaches a range of health aspects including training, nutrition and diet and body shaping. He believes a good body is within the reach of everybody.
It's not as hard as people think. As long as you have a bit of motivation there, it can happen very quickly, quite readily.
The sport sees 4 competitors pulled behind supercharged boats over the 350-metre course. Conditions were slightly choppy on the Manning River as a crowd of more than 100 gathered for the preliminary heats. Skiers reached speeds of up to 150 kilometres per hour as their feet start to sizzle until they hit the finish line. 13 different categories will be contested over the weekend. The ages of the skiers ranges from teenagers to those in their 60s. Some of the sport's leading stars have come to Taree for the titles.
Well, we've got quite a few good skiers on the national circuit. You've got Rod Osborne, who is a local guy. He's a former Australian champion. He hasn't competed much this season. We've got Gary Adams, the current Australian champion. He's 2 times Australian champion. Ryan McIntosh is back after a long spell, and he's got the Australian record at 15.72 seconds. And also Warren Cornell, another local guy. I think he's last year's New South Wales outboard champion, and he's in with a big shot this year.
Competition will resume at 8:30 tomorrow morning, with the finals being held in the afternoon. Jason Neuenhoff, NBN News.
The action is the second national strike called by the United Mine Workers Union in less than 2 months. When Australian producers recently accepted a 5.5% cut in the price of steaming coal to Japan, the nation's 20,000 mine workers walked off the job in protest. The union claims Japanese companies are being allowed to dictate buying terms because Australian producers are refusing to push for a fair deal. This time it's also blaming the federal government for approving the price instead of rejecting it, and says its angry coal companies won't support the idea of an industry-wide moratorium on retrenchments while a pricing inquiry is underway. According to Newcastle-based Port Waratah Coal Services, the 7 colliers waiting to be loaded offshore won't be affected by the 2-day stoppage. Stockpiles are holding double the amount of coal compared to the last strike. However, for other vessels yet to arrive, loading will be delayed early next week during an expected catch-up period. Melinda Smith, NBN News.
Wayne only began the sport 4 years ago, but has started to make his mark. He won the novice 650 to 750 class at the recent state titles and grabbed 3rd in the freestyle. His triumphs are even more remarkable, considering he underwent a major kidney operation only 3 months ago. Part of his success can be attributed to the instant access he has to Lake Macquarie from his fishing point home. The rest comes from good balance and his hotted-up jet ski.
Just recently bought a 750 SX stand-up and just limited it and made it modified, and it's flying.
The jet ski can cruise atop the water at up to nearly 80 kilometres an hour, but this obsession with speed comes at a price.
Jet skis on average cost around about $9,000 these days, and if you want to hot it up, you know, a couple of grand on top of that.
But every dollar will be worth it if Wayne can win the national title at Darling Harbour this weekend. Richard O'Leary, NBN News.
Cruel Britannia, Britannia waives the rules, is a caustic account by ordinary soldiers of the collapse of defences in Singapore and its fall to the Japanese.
It'll give a picture from an ordinary bloke's point of view, not from someone in the officers' club or out, grouse hunting or shooting tigers or whatever. We were there in among it.
Ray Connolly of Newcastle and his Sydney mate Bob Wilson served in the 2nd 10th Field Ambulance Unit and, along with the rest of the Australian 8th Division, were cut off when the Japanese overran Singapore. The Australians battled overwhelming odds, but the book claims they were abandoned by a British command, which later accused the diggers of cowardice, misconduct and desertion.
We were so mad and so aggravated when we read what was in the Wavell report after 50 years, which is vile and untrue, and we've given our opinion in the book.
The British considered Singapore impregnable and paid a hefty price with the loss of personnel and the pride of its naval fleet. More than 2,000 Australians were killed in the campaign, thousands more were consigned to the living hell of prison camps and Japanese atrocities. A two-fingered typist and an already published author, Ray doesn't pretend the diggers were saints, but in his latest book hopes to set the record straight in honour of those who served and died.
This one is about what the Japanese did to us, and this one here is about what the Pommies did to us, which is nearly as bad.
Even so, it's a situation that has the Ironworkers Union worried. It does not accept that BHP will definitely close the mill next year, despite the company's claim. Secretary Maury Rudd says BHP will keep it running if the domestic market improves, and so should be taking on full-time employees to fill current vacancies.
We believe they should be replaced by new starters from the gate, because it takes 14 or 15 months of the training even to pick up the basics of a lot of the jobs they're going to, and we believe that they should be employed as full-time employees, not contract workers.
Human Resources Manager at the Steelworks, Alan McLeod, disagrees, saying 190 people will become surplus next year and space must be left for them.
The right thing to do by the employees is for us to take on term hire people for the vacancies that arise now, that have arisen now in the plant and will arise in the future, and to protect those jobs for the merchant mill people when they become surplus next year.
The union also accuses BHP of letting its investment level in Australia slip while putting money into places like Asia and the United States. Mr Rudd says job cuts have gone as far as they can.
We're now at the far as we can go with BHP, and we're saying, well, you've now got to start producing the goods for us also, for our members, for full-time employment.
Novocastrian Productions' latest offering, the musical Man of La Mancha, is set during the Spanish Inquisition. It centres around an imprisoned poet's efforts to cheer fellow inmates with the tale of Don Quixote. Jenny Newman stars as Aldonza, the prison whore, turning in a powerful performance. Don McEwen directs and stars in the production, already hailed by some critics as the best of the shows staged by him in the Mission Theatre. The season continues until May the 14th. For Newcastle's Repertory Theatre, a new season is about to begin. The Crucible, written by American playwright Arthur Miller, is set during the 17th century Salem witch trials. Renowned Sydney-based director Robert Levis has made the trek north for 2 months to head the production. The result, even in rehearsal, is powerful. The Crucible opens on Wednesday night. The extended season runs until May the 28th.
Anzac Day is always a special occasion for this army town, and thousands line the streets to honour those who've served in war. Half the town had turned out for the Day of Remembrance. National flags waved proudly as Australia's current and past fighting forces marched through Singleton. For the first time, a banner had to be carried by school children to represent the diggers of World War I. The number of former servicemen and women continues to dwindle as time starts to catch up with them. But the descendants of these fallen heroes continue the tradition, even if the medals are nearly as big as the wearers. The memorial service remembered the past and celebrated the future.
We do not gather on a day like today to glorify war. We come together in appreciation of commitment, selflessness, patriotism and courage.
An important theme this Anzac Day was the passing on of the Anzac tradition and spirit to Australia's youth.
I suggest that the Anzac qualities remain those which should be dearest to us still, and are those by which we should choose to define our ideals and our way of life.
Wreaths were laid for those who've died in war, including a tribute from the United States by Mrs. Sally Rivera. And Jane Anderson has the Anzac service at Gosford.
Speed cameras were introduced to country roads for the Anzac holiday weekend, but a major concern for police remains the number of motorists they've caught driving with high blood alcohol levels. 1,800 have been breath tested, 23, as many as during the entire Easter break, have been charged so far. At Scone in the Upper Hunter, one man was caught with a blood alcohol level of 2.5, and at Cessnock, a woman recorded a level of 2.10. Senior Sergeant Ray Smith has been overseeing a large police presence on the roads, hoping to keep the region fatality-free. There have been 9 crashes, including this one at Taro near Maitland. Near Singleton on Saturday, 4 people were injured, 2 seriously. The use of speed cameras on loan to the region is likely to become commonplace for future holiday periods. Andrew Lobb, NBN News.